At Christmas dinner, my sister unwrapped a trip to Paris, my brother got a Rolex, and I got a gift bag filled with expired coupons. That was the moment I finally understood what my family truly thought of me. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Rin, and for most of my life, I tried to keep peace in a family that never really saw me. My parents praised my siblings, Lara and Cole, for everything they did, while my own hard work barely earned a nod. I told myself it didn't matter, but deep down it always hurt. That Christmas, I actually hoped things would change. I had a new job and felt proud of myself. Watching Lara open a Paris vacation and Cole unwrap a Rolex felt like watching a movie where I didn't belong. When my mother handed me the tiny bag with old coupons, everyone laughed like it was harmless. I felt something inside me break. I went home early and cried because I finally accepted that I had spent years giving to people who gave me nothing back. So I stopped. No more paying bills for Lara. No helping Cole with his emergencies. No covering my parents' overdue payments. I didn't argue or explain, I just stepped away. Slowly, they felt the loss. Their plans fell apart, their money issues piled up, and they blamed me. When they confronted me, I placed the expired coupons on the table and said, "This is how you treated me." I walked out and built a life where I wasn't invisible. My quiet revenge was simple, I chose myself, and for the first time, I felt free. My name is Rin, and for as long as I can remember, I lived in a house where I barely felt seen. I worked hard, stayed responsible, and did everything asked of me, yet it never seemed to matter. My parents focused their attention on my siblings, Lara and Cole, like they were the center of every moment. Lara was always praised for her charm, and Cole was celebrated for anything he attempted, even when it was something small. I, on the other hand, could bring home good grades, handle chores without being told, or reach important milestones, and it would still pass by without acknowledgement. If I ever hoped for recognition, I was met with a dismissive, "It's nothing special." Over time, I learned to stay quiet because speaking up usually led nowhere. Family conversations moved around me, decisions were made without asking me, and even at gatherings, I often stood in the background while everyone else took the spotlight. I didn't want attention for the sake of it, I just wanted to feel like I belonged the same way Lara and Cole did. Still, I kept going. I helped whenever needed, stepped in when something had to be done, and filled whatever space was left for me. Even though I felt invisible most days, I held on to the hope that someday things might shift. Maybe one day they would look at me the way they looked at my siblings, with warmth, pride, or even simple interest. But deep inside, I knew the truth, in that family, I was the reliable one, the quiet one, the one who carried responsibilities without complaint. Lara and Cole were the favorites, and I was the afterthought. And the more time passed, the harder it became to ignore how deeply that reality shaped my place in their world. Growing up, my place in the family was shaped by one expectation after another. I was the one who had to step in whenever someone needed an extra hand. If a chore was left undone, it became mine. If someone forgot a task, I was the backup. It didn't matter whether I was tired, busy, or overwhelmed, my role was to make everything easier for everyone else. Lara and Cole moved through life with a freedom I never tasted. They were shielded from consequences, praised even when they made mistakes, and treated as if their comfort mattered more than anything. When they slipped up, someone excused it instantly. When I did the smallest thing wrong, it turned into a lecture about responsibility and how I should know better. Any time I felt hurt or frustrated, I tried to speak, but my words never landed. If I mentioned feeling left out, the reaction was the same every time, a sigh, an eye roll, and the label that stung more than anything, dramatic. It didn't matter if my voice cracked or my hands shook, they insisted I was exaggerating, making things up, or trying to start trouble. So I learned to swallow everything. I stayed calm when I wanted to scream. I stepped aside when I wanted space. I helped when I needed help myself. I carried burdens that were never meant to be mine, because saying no wasn't an option anyone allowed me. As the years passed, the pattern only hardened. Childhood turned into adulthood, but nothing changed. Lara remained the shining one, Cole stayed untouchable, and I remained the person expected to fill gaps and keep quiet. Each dismissal carved its own mark, and even when I tried to ignore the ache, it stayed with me, deepening every time my feelings were brushed away like they meant nothing at all. As December approached, I found myself holding a small spark of hope I hadn't felt in years. I had earned a promotion at work, something that took long nights, steady commitment, and quiet determination. For the first time in a long while, I felt proud of myself in a way that couldn't be brushed aside. With Christmas coming, I wondered if this might finally be the moment my family noticed me. I didn't expect a grand celebration or dramatic praise, just a simple acknowledgement that I had achieved something meaningful. Maybe this year would carry a different tone. Maybe the dinner would feel warmer, more balanced, less one-sided. As I prepared for the gathering, I chose a small gift for each person, wrapped them carefully, and tried to let myself believe the evening could shift things. The house would be full of lights, food, and conversation like always, but I imagined a space where I didn't feel like an afterthought. I pictured my parents asking about my work or showing interest in what I had accomplished. Even a brief moment of recognition would have meant more than anything. Walking into the living room, I took in the familiar decorations, the scent of dinner, and the sound of my siblings talking excitedly. I tried to keep my nerves steady as I joined them, reminding myself that this could be a turning point. After so many years of feeling overlooked, I just wanted one gathering where I didn't fade into the background. Sitting at the table, I breathed in slowly and told myself to stay open, to give the night a chance. I didn't want to expect too much, but I couldn't help hoping that, just this once, the holiday might hold something different, something that made me feel seen. When the gift exchange began, the room filled with excitement. My parents started with Lara, handing her a large, beautifully wrapped box. She opened it slowly, letting the suspense build, and when she pulled out the envelope inside, her smile lit up the entire table. Inside were tickets for a full trip to Paris. The moment she announced it, the room erupted. There were cheers, hugs, and delighted voices praising how perfect the surprise was. Next, they turned to Cole. His package was smaller but wrapped with the same careful attention. He peeled back the paper and revealed a sleek box holding a brand new Rolex. The shine of the watch caught the light, and everyone reacted with the same level of excitement they had shown for Lara. Compliments flew across the room, and each person took a turn admiring it as if it were some rare treasure. The atmosphere felt almost ceremonial, like each presentation was part of a grand event. My parents looked thrilled, taking in the joyful reactions from both of them. The table buzzed with conversation about plans, luxury, and how deserving Lara and Cole were of such impressive gifts. I watched quietly, trying to stay steady as the celebration continued around me. The room felt bright and loud, filled with applause and admiration for them. Every expression, every word, every gesture reinforced how easily they received attention that came so rarely my way. Still, I stayed seated with a small smile, waiting for my turn, hoping the night would carry the same energy when my gift reached my hands. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine that maybe this year I would be part of the same joyful circle, sharing in the warmth that filled the room. When the attention finally shifted toward me, the atmosphere changed in a way I felt instantly. My father reached under the table and placed a tiny gift bag in front of me. It looked almost like something handed out at a child's party, light, crinkled, and barely filled. I pulled the tissue paper aside and saw a small stack of grocery coupons inside. A quick glance showed dates from years earlier, long past any possible use. For a moment, I couldn't even process it. I just stared, wondering if there was some mistake or if another gift was coming. But nothing else appeared. My mother let out a loud, playful laugh, waving her hand as if brushing off any confusion. "You're practical, honey," she said with a cheerful tone. "You'll find a use." Her voice carried a brightness that didn't match the sting rising in my chest. She acted as though she had given me something thoughtful and clever, as though the entire thing was one harmless, amusing gesture. Around the table, the reaction followed her lead. Lara chuckled lightly, exchanging a look with Cole, who shook his head with a smirk. The sound of their amusement floated through the room, echoing off the walls in a way that made the gift feel even smaller than it already was. No one paused long enough to consider how it might feel to sit there with scraps no one else would have wanted. I held the bag gently, trying to keep my hands steady. I didn't laugh, though I tried to soften my face so no one would see how deeply the moment cut. The sharp contrast between the earlier celebration and the quiet dismissal in front of me settled heavily in my chest. I nodded politely, placing the coupons back into the bag as the conversation moved on without hesitation, leaving me sitting there with a silence only I seemed to notice. The moment I set the small bag down, a heat climbed through me so fast it seemed to fill every part of my body. It wasn't anger at first, it was something sharper, something that made my throat tighten and my vision blur for a second. All those years I had spent finding meaningful presents, choosing things with care, making sure everyone felt valued during holidays, birthdays, or any moment that mattered, all of it suddenly felt foolish. Every time someone in the house needed extra money, I stepped in. When bills piled up, I helped without hesitation. If anyone faced a setback, I rearranged my own plans to make theirs easier. I thought these choices came from love, and for a long time, I believed they appreciated it, even if they didn't say much. But sitting at that table, holding those useless slips of paper, the truth finally settled in. Their kindness toward me was never rooted in affection. It was convenience. I had been the reliable one, the person they could count on to lift whatever weight they didn't want to carry. They saw me as someone who would endlessly give without needing anything in return. The contrast between their joy moments earlier and the careless gesture handed to me made everything painfully clear. The sound of their laughter echoed in my head, each chuckle pressing deeper into the realization that I had mistaken my role for belonging. I wasn't cherished. I wasn't considered. I was simply a source, a dependable hand they assumed would always be there. That clarity stung more than anything I had experienced in that house. I sat very still, trying to keep my expression calm, but inside, something fundamental shifted. A line had been crossed, one I didn't even know existed until that exact second. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I waited for a natural pause in the conversation, then pushed my chair back gently. I didn't want to draw attention to myself or make a scene, I just needed to leave before the weight in my chest became too obvious. I murmured a simple excuse about feeling tired, and no one at the table questioned it. They barely looked up. That small detail cut more deeply than anything else. I walked toward the door without hearing a single voice call after me. The cold air outside hit my face as soon as I stepped out, and I felt tears gathering before I even reached my car. They didn't fall because of the ridiculous gift sitting in my bag. Those scraps meant nothing on their own. What hurt was everything behind them, the long history of being ignored, dismissed, and taken for granted. Every moment I had pushed down over the years rose to the surface at once. By the time I sat behind the wheel, the tears finally escaped, steady and quiet, rolling down in a way that made it hard to breathe. When I reached my place, I didn't turn on any lights. I sat on the edge of my bed, letting the silence settle around me. I didn't feel anger so much as a deep, overwhelming exhaustion. I cried for the younger version of myself who kept trying, hoping, believing that one day things would shift. I cried for the countless times I gave more than I had because I wanted to feel like part of the family. And I cried because I finally understood that nothing I did would ever change how they chose to see me. In that still moment, something solid formed inside me, a promise I made to myself alone. This was the last holiday where I would accept being overlooked. I wasn't going to play the part they had written for me anymore. I wouldn't return to that table as someone they could walk over. Not again. In the weeks that followed, I moved through my days with a new kind of clarity. I didn't make any dramatic statements or confrontations, I simply pulled back from habits that had drained me for years. Whenever Lara sent a message about another bill she couldn't manage, I didn't rush in with my card or my savings. I answered politely but didn't offer solutions. When Cole called with one of his sudden urgent needs, I listened for a moment, then told him I couldn't help this time. His surprised silence told me just how much he had relied on my constant support. My parents were used to me handling small debts that slipped through their fingers, unpaid amounts they never mentioned directly but always expected me to cover. Instead of stepping in automatically, I let the responsibility return to them. I didn't scold or explain. I didn't remind them of the countless times I had done it before. I simply stayed quiet and let them handle their own affairs. During this shift, I also focused on something I had never prioritized: myself. I spent my evenings resting, reading, or taking long walks after work. I cooked meals just for me without worrying about someone else's needs. I allowed my emotions to settle, giving myself permission to feel everything I had pushed aside for so long. Each day, the boundary between my life and theirs became stronger, clearer, and more stable. The most important part was that I didn't share my new approach with anyone. I didn't announce my decisions or seek approval. I didn't try to prove a point. I simply lived differently. For the first time, I wasn't carrying the weight of everyone else's choices. I wasn't fixing their problems or making myself small for their comfort. Quietly, steadily, I stepped away, and I didn't look back. Months passed, and the consequences of my absence became impossible to ignore. Lara had been planning another trip, something she had expected me to quietly assist with, and suddenly the expenses didn't add up. Reservations went unpaid, and plans collapsed. The frustration in her voice was sharp, a mixture of disbelief and irritation. I stayed out of it, offering no guidance or money, letting her navigate the fallout on her own. Cole's financial safety net disappeared too. Without my steady interventions, a car payment he assumed would be taken care of bounced. Calls from the bank grew more frequent, and panic replaced his usual confident tone. For years, he had taken my assistance for granted, never imagining that I might stop. Now, the reality he had long avoided was hitting him head-on. Even my parents, who had relied on me quietly to manage overdue bills and utilities, faced mounting stress. Lights flickered, heating bills piled up, and overdue notices appeared. For the first time, they could feel the weight I had carried silently for years. Their casual assumption that I would always step in had been shattered, leaving them scrambling to keep things running. I watched all of it unfold from a distance, not out of cruelty, but from a quiet resolve to protect myself. There was no need to gloat, no need to explain. Their struggle wasn't punishment, it was simply the natural outcome of their dependence. The house, once maintained effortlessly because of me, now reflected the consequences of their choices. For the first time, they experienced what life looked like without me as the constant safety net. And in that, I found a quiet satisfaction, knowing I had finally stepped out of the shadows and reclaimed the balance that had always been denied to me. They reached their limit on a quiet Sunday when we met for a family brunch. I hadn't planned on staying long, but the moment I walked in, I could feel the tension sitting in the air. Lara crossed her arms, Cole leaned forward with a frown, and my parents looked strained in a way I hadn't seen before. It didn't take long before the questions started, sharp, urgent, all aimed at me. My mother spoke first, demanding to know why I had pulled away. Lara accused me of letting her down. Cole insisted I had left them to struggle. Each voice layered over the next, forming a wall of blame that pushed harder and harder. They acted as if my absence were some sudden betrayal, ignoring the years I had spent propping them up. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend myself. Instead, I reached into my bag and set the tiny stack of expired coupons on the table. The same ones they had handed me with laughter, not realizing they had given me the clearest picture of my place in their world. The room fell silent as they stared at the slips of paper, confusion growing across their faces. I looked at each of them slowly before speaking. My voice stayed steady, even though the memory still stung. "That's exactly how you valued me," I said. "Worthless. Used up. Forgotten." No one responded right away. The weight of my words settled over the table, heavy and unmovable. For the first time, they seemed to understand that something deeper had broken long before I stopped helping. My father shifted uncomfortably, Lara's face tightened, and Cole lowered his gaze. I didn't wait for excuses or apologies. I stood, nodded politely, and walked away from the table, leaving the coupons where they belonged, right in front of the people who had taught me how little they thought of me. After I placed the coupons down and spoke, the reaction was immediate and chaotic. Lara's shoulders shook as tears fell, a sound that made the room feel heavier. Cole's face flushed, his jaw tightening as he tried to argue, insisting that I was overreacting or misunderstanding. My parents jumped in quickly, waving their hands and claiming it was just a joke, trying to twist the moment into something light-hearted, something that could be dismissed with a laugh. I listened quietly, letting their voices fill the air without responding. I had spent years letting them redirect my feelings, diminish my experiences, and rewrite the story of how I had been treated. But this time I refused to let them shift the truth. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't plead or defend myself. I simply stood tall, feeling the clarity of what I had learned through all the years of being overlooked. For the first time, I acted solely for myself. I didn't care about fixing their emotions or smoothing over the chaos I had been blamed for maintaining for decades. I turned away from the table, from the tears, from the defensiveness and the feigned lightness. Every step felt like a reclaiming of space I had never been allowed to occupy. Walking out of that room, I felt an unfamiliar sense of freedom. I wasn't running away in fear or frustration, I was leaving with purpose, leaving behind the patterns that had kept me small. For the first time, I wasn't anyone's helper, anyone's backup, or anyone's afterthought. I was simply me, complete, unapologetic, and finally choosing my own path. The house remained behind me, filled with confusion, guilt, and unmet expectations, but I moved forward with a weight lifted. For the first time, I belonged to myself, and that truth was more powerful than anything they could ever give or take away. Months after I stepped away, my life began to take shape in ways I hadn't allowed before. I found a small apartment that felt like a sanctuary, a space where I could breathe and make decisions without consulting anyone else. The walls were mine to decorate, the routines mine to set. For the first time, silence felt comforting rather than lonely. I built friendships slowly, carefully, with people who valued me for who I was instead of what I could provide. Even simple conversations, where no one asked for favors or judged my choices, became a source of joy I hadn't realized I was missing. Each connection reinforced the idea that I didn't need constant validation from the family I had left behind. Boundaries became my new foundation. I no longer responded immediately to messages demanding money, time, or effort. I learned to say no without guilt, to protect my energy, and to keep my personal life intact. Every decision reinforced my independence and the sense that I was finally in control of my own story. My happiness was quiet but undeniable. I didn't seek revenge in anger or spite. I didn't flaunt my success or make them feel my absence directly. I simply lived fully, prioritizing my peace, my growth, and my stability. Meanwhile, my family's struggles continued. Vacations went unpaid, bills went unnoticed, and the house they had relied on me to maintain became a constant source of stress. Only then, far too late, did they recognize what they had lost, the one person who had quietly held everything together. My ultimate victory wasn't in confrontation or punishment. It was in choosing myself, thriving without their approval, and proving, through the simple act of living well, that I was far stronger and more essential than they had ever realized.